Hey guys, welcome to the Practical Build Management with Gradle course. The third section of the course will help us to get understanding of how dependencies are managed by Gradle, how to add repositories to download dependencies from, or how to add custom configuration to support dedicated dependencies for integration tests. We're also going to overview how dependency resolution works and how to exclude a transitive dependency, or how to make sure that proper version of dependency is used through the project. In this section we are going to explore Gradle more, especially in scope of dependency management. We are going to add dependencies for our Java project, repositories to download dependencies from. And later we are going to introduce new configuration to support integration tests. We're also going to overview how dependency resolution works, how to make sure that particular dependency version is used, and how to exclude some transitive dependency. In the first video of this section, we are going to extend our project by adding dependencies for compilation and for unit tests. Also, we are going to manage repositories where to download dependencies from. In this video, we are going to practice to add dependency to our project for logging capabilities. Then we also will add a repository from which our project dependencies will be downloaded. We're also going to overview how to make a project from a single module project to a multi-module project, and then how to add a module as a dependency for another one. Let's overview configurations provided by Java plugin that we apply to our project. Java plugin adds a number of dependency configurations to our project. As shown on the current slide, it assigns those configurations to tasks such as compile Java and tests. You can see there are in the green, we have configurations to which we can assign some dependencies to be used in those class paths. For example, there is a compile only configuration which allows us to add dependencies for our project to be used just for compilation of our source code. There is also other configurations like test compile, like test runtime, default. So basically each configuration extends another one in order to apply new dependencies to this scope. So in our case, the compile only dependency is the purest one. So basically at this level there is no dependency from other scopes. Then goes compile, which is extended by runtime and then by default. So basically when we are adding some dependencies to default configuration, it will be applied to runtime automatically. And also if we are adding a dependency to compile configuration, this dependency will be available in runtime. And similar works for test related dependencies. Basically test configuration extends compile, and it means that dependency added to compile configuration will be available for test compile and test runtime, and dependency added to test compile configuration will be available for test runtime, and so on. Now we have understanding how configuration works. Let's continue. Okay, now we know how configurations working in Gradle, and let's try to do something. Let me start with introduction what we have for our section 3 in terms of source code. As you can see, we've got two Gradle modules, module API and module service. Module API contains simple interface called module API with no methods, just for simplicity, and there is no build.gradle file. Module server contains module service class which will implement module API in future, but for now it has just a dependency for a logger. We're going to use slf1j, and that's it. And there are several build on Gradle files, one for module service and one for our root project. And there is a new file we introduced, it's called settings.gradle, where we can actually tell to Gradle that we're going to have a multi-module project, and in order to do this we need to type next construction. It is include, and then goes name of our modules. We have module API and we have module service. So basically we have two modules. The include statement is just a method that receives as arguments a set of modules that will consist a multi-module Gradle project. Let's call Gradle projects task. You can see now we have two module services registered. Okay, but in order to execute particular task for particular project, we need to write its name, its module API in our case, and let's call build. You can see task was executed successfully, but nothing was compiled because currently Gradle doesn't know that our module API is a Java project. Let's fix this. Let's open a root build.gradle file and let's apply a Java plugin for our module. In order to do this, we need to write next construction. Basically it's a project, and here we can apply our Java plugin for our modules. So subprojects is a closure that allows us to apply configuration for all subprojects except the root one. And now let's try to build our module API build. So you can see it now, it compiles. That's great, but let's try to compile another module called module service. You can see it failed due to the fact that there is no slf1j library applied. And let's fix this. In order to introduce a dependency in Gradle, it's quite simple and intuitive. You need to use word dependencies, and then goes a dependency. Basically for each configuration we can specify dependency. In this way, let me just copy prepared name of a dependency in order to save some time. So now we need just this dependency. Let's try to build our module again. You can see now there are less errors. However, we still cannot compile our project. And this is because Gradle cannot identify repositories defined where it can download our dependency. And in order to fix this, we need to specify repositories to use by Gradle to download dependencies from. And this can be done by special command called repositories, where we can specify which repositories we would like to use to download our dependencies from. In our case, use JCenter is currently the most popular repository that could be used to download dependencies from. We can also use Maven local dependency. Basically, it's a path to home directory and .m2 repository. So basically, here it is. It's just a regular standard Maven repository that comes with Maven. We can also use Maven Central as a repository. It's the same as JCenter, but it's standard default Maven remote repository. We can also use custom one. Basically, we can use lots of different repositories to download dependencies from. Okay, now you can see that our build is working. At least we were able to compile our modules. But now let's try to implement our interface. And you can see our build is now failed. And the reason is that Gradle cannot resolve a module API interface. And this is because our module API interface is defined in our module API module. And in order to have it available for our module service, we need to specify it as a dependency for module service. And in order to do this, we can open our build.gradle file for module service and specify here a dependency for our module API. And in order to do this, we can use the same compile configuration. There is just a difference. We need to specify a project, and then goes a name of the project, module API in our case. And let's try to build everything again. You can see now Gradle was able to successfully compile our project.